Okay, the last part of this that we need to look at is how do the amino acids get into play here. We now know how to use a code to figure out what amino acid this codes for, but how are we going to get those amino acids over here? So when we're talking about getting the amino acids to where they need to go according to this blueprint, we're talking about the actions of transfer RNA. So I'm going to do my best to draw a couple little transfer RNA molecules over here. And they kind of sort of look like a T. On one end of the T is a code. And it happens to be a code that's going to match our messenger RNA. So it's going to match our codons. So this code, I'm going to use the RNA, AUCG. So if I have an A, this one's going to be UAC. And on the other end is what it's bringing, what it's transferring, what it's taking. And what it's taking, oh, that's beautiful. It's taking the amino acid. And in this case, we know that this one is methionine. Now we have two, so we'll go ahead and put the other one in here. And get our matches. And on this one, oh, that's lovely. This one is called the stop codon. So these guys are going to bring over their amino acids to the messenger RNA that is at the ribosome. So this one, it's going to head over here. So it's going to link up. There's its matchy-matchy. And it's going to deposit, oh yeah, let's see if I can do this. Oh, that's beautiful. It's going to, oh, so close. It's going to deposit the methionine. This one, heading over here. So again, there's its matchy-matchy. These are called anticodons. We'll add those to our notes when I get finished destroying this picture. And it's bringing over the stop. Okay, so just a couple of things to add in. These two codes on the transfer RNAs. These are called, I'm going to have to turn this a little bit, anticodons. Now, anticodon, I don't know about you, but this sounds like such a negative term, but it's not a negative term. It's not a positive term either. All that it means, it's just the match to the codon on the messenger RNA. So it matches the codon on the messenger RNA. So nothing anti about it. It's weird. Now on the other end of the transfers is where you're going to find the amino acids, those mean old acids. And again, these are the building blocks for your proteins. Now I'm going back to my messed up protein here. So my methionine is going to be connected to my stop codon here, or however many amino acids there could be. Proteins can be very, very large. So we'll just kind of take a look-see at what an end product could look like. But they're held together by bonds, of course, not Gorilla Glue or duct tape. They're held together by peptide bonds. And then once you start with your start codon, which is methionine, I'm such a goober sometimes, and you get to your stop, you're done. Translation is over. It started here, it ended there, and you've got your protein done. Now, I mentioned that proteins could be very diverse, and they can also be very large. So you could have, and a lot of times the depiction of a protein kind of looks like a beaded necklace. So these would be your amino acids, and this would be your peptide bonds. Now once your protein is completed, then it's going to fold into the shape that it is meant to take. And when it comes to proteins, and this is something that we talked about way back when, their structure is going to determine their function. And their structure is sensitive to temperature, it's sensitive to pH, and if the structure becomes damaged, it's called denaturing, then the protein will not function correctly. So there are, I think it's 4 different folds or folded structures of proteins, primary, secondary, tertiary, maybe it's just 3. And again, the structure determines the function. But at this point, you're done. Now when we're looking at this all together, and I'm just going to have to flip over a little bit, or let's just start a new one. What we're looking at here, and I've got to turn this just a wee bit, is we're looking at what's called gene expression. So how do those genes on those chromosomes, how do they end up becoming hair or fingernails or enzymes? How does that happen? And basically, we're going to start with that genetic code in the DNA. It's going to be passed on to the RNA, and then ultimately it will be translated into your proteins. Now, don't forget that there are some processes that go along with this, so there's some terminology. So RNA made from DNA is transcribing. RNA, and the code on RNA rather, becoming protein, that is translation. Now here's where you might come up with a little bit of issue. You know, DNA making copies of itself, that's replication. Sorry, I've got to try to be fancy. I'm not going to confuse that with anything. But now we've added 2 T words and they sound so much alike. But here's a little itty bitty way that might help. If we look at the 2 words, transcription has an extra R. So we could say that that extra R in transcription is for RNA. It's just one little easy cheesy way to possibly remember this. And one little side note here, this gene expression wasn't always known about how the information got from being locked up in a chromosome in the DNA out to a ribosome and translated into a protein. Watson and Crick. So if you remember Watson and Crick, those that put the model of DNA together in 1953, Francis Crick took part in what was called the central dogma. He came up with the central dogma, a question that puzzled scientists for the longest time about how this code got from nucleus to ribosome to become a protein. And it was no longer considered a dogma or a puzzle, an enigma, something that they didn't know, once they figured out that the go-between, and really the workhorse here, was the RNA.